This video is brought to you by the students of Taylor's University, studying under the Foundation of Natural and Built Environments. This video is an assignment under the course Introduction to the Construction Industry under our lecturer, Ms. Delia Zain, and our tutor, Mr. Yongchen Lee. Hi, welcome! In this video, we will be presenting to you an infographic documentary video on the construction stages and the roles and responsibilities of the players in the construction industry. The team involved in the creation of this video and its contents are Ashley Lau, Matthew Wong, Sylvester Cheng, Shania Tan, Joey Chang, Fong Yikang, and Law Ka Meng under the March 2018 intake. Now sit back and enjoy the fruits of our labor. Have you ever wondered how the construction process in Malaysia is carried out? The architect is the leader of the construction process. He works together with a group of specialized consultants. There are many steps and procedures which needs to be taken care of in the construction process. These consultants work together to build a building. Let's look at our scenario. Our client comes in looking for an architect, and the architect will jot down the client's requirements. The client has requested for a single-story bungalow to be demolished in order to build a semi-detached house for two new owners by subdividing the land. Any interior style will do, however, it must contain a curtain wall facade with a watertight design and a double volume living space. The client has requested for the building to be GBI Gold rated.
What should I do about this project? Well, there are many things that the client wants for his building, but yeah, I think I'll know how I'll go around this.
The architect would then form a team of consultants. This team would consist of the architect, quantity surveyor, contractor, interior designer, mechanical and electrical engineer, civil and structural engineer, land surveyor, grid specialist, and the town planner. The client will get the site plan and property title from their local authority, which is the MPPJ. After that, the architect will prepare the demolition plan. He will then go to the MPPJ to get approval for the demolition permit. After that, the contractor would cut off the water and electrical supply. The land surveyor will visit the site before the demolition begins. He will get the perimeter and the boundaries of the site as well as the condition of the soil to look out for hazardous materials while preparing plans and safety measures.
Before subdividing the land surveyor needs to discuss the subdivision plan with the client. After that, the land surveyor will prepare and sign the subdivision plan and planning permit. After all the subdivision work is completed, the land surveyor will launch the survey for approval. When development permit has been granted, the land surveyor will submit a request to survey and land records for survey reference number and block number based on the development permit. Before the subdivision can be finalized, the land surveyor needs to carry out the boundary survey to update the boundary lines and prepare the site for construction before the work to prevent legal dispute. Once the boundary survey is completed, the land surveyor will conduct the site and topographic survey prior to subdivision design and prepare tentative plan of subdivision as part of the subdivision application. When the design is completed, the land surveyor will perform lot survey to ensure that the initial layout is consistent with the design. Once all the survey is done, the land surveyor acts as an agent for the owner of the land in submitting the subdivision plan and site plan to the local authorities to make sure that the proper house is constructed in the proper locations. The local authorities receive the plan of subdivision from the land surveyor for certifications. It's considered the application, refer to the plan to the relevant authorities and ensure all relevant requirements has been met. Once the survey is approved, land surveyor will usually also submit it to the land title office for the client. The office will issue new title for the subdivision.
After that, the town planner will get the land subdivision and building plan approval from the MPPJ. The town planner would then propose a site plan of the subdivided land to the architect. Only then would the demolition process start. Part 1. Schematic Design Phase. When the demolition of the building is in process, the architect, also known as the AR, will begin designing the proposed building to be shown to the client for approval. For this phase, there must be constant communication between the architect and the client, as the AR must understand what the client wants for the design. The architect first prepares the preliminary conceptual sketch proposals, which will then be submitted to the MPPJ for approval under relevant building laws. The quantity surveyor, which is also known as the QS, then starts to estimate the construction cost based on area, volume, and unit costs. The mechanical and electrical engineer then applies for utilities from TNB, Syabas, and SKMM for water supply and power supply approval. Besides that, the contractor also applies for the Manual Saleran Mesra Alam MSMA, and the town planner is to submit the development plan proposal to the MPPJ to obtain planning permission. The architect then prepares to submit drawings and other necessary documents, including the MSMA approval, to the MPPJ to obtain development order. Part 2. Design Development Phase. After the client has approved the conceptual sketch designs by the AR starts developing the schematic design drawings with the help of other consultants. All the schematic sketch designs must include necessary measurements, dimensions, materials, schedule of finishes, and specifications which complies with the UBBL building codes. After that, the green specialist comes in to choose materials for construction while conferring with the AR and the QS to remain in budget. After all the materials are set, the AR has to set up a meeting with the GBI Design Assessment Team to give a presentation to Green Building Index Sdn Bhd. The GBI will judge based on energy efficiency, indoor environment quality, material, resources, and others.
Green Specialist role is still considered a new role since it's only been established for about 10 years. The role of a Green Specialist is mainly to be an advisor. They provide assistance on material choosing, determine what type of material is best suitable for clients' need. A Green Specialist is responsible for advising and recommending architects to have an eco-friendly design. They are also in charge of checking whether the material chosen will impact the environment. For example, a Green Specialist has to ensure the imported material can exceed 500 km within the perimeter of the building location, so that it will reduce the carbon footprint that was caused from the shipping itself. Architect will usually discuss the material selection with a Green Specialist to make sure it minimizes the impact on the environment as much as possible. A Green Specialist will also offer financial incentive to minimize the cost from the material chosen. A Green Specialist can also register as a GBI Facilitator. A GBI Facilitator's role is to investigate the types of material chosen to build the house, in which this case, the subdivided semi-detached house, and also making sure the house is as eco-friendly as possible with energy and water conservative plan. The client intends to achieve a minimum GBI rating of Gold, which means the classification score issued by the GBIAP has to exceed the percentage of 76 to achieve Gold. To start off, an applicant from the building team will have to submit projects for GBI design assessment along with the materials as well as energy and water conservative plans. The process should be done before the commencement of construction so as to enable the project to be monitored and assessed in its entirety. GBI Facilitator will, upon after the completion of construction, table the assessment report and award a certification with GBI score to show the score achieved. The applicant should submit the completion and verification assessment, short for CVA, within 12 months after the completion of construction to be issued by the GBI team for award. Buildings are awarded with platinum, gold, or silver certified rating, depending on the score achieved. The house has to be reassessed every 3 years to maintain a GBI rating to ensure the buildings are well maintained.
The M&E engineer, CNS engineer, facade specialist, landscape architect, and interior designer also starts with their own detailed drawings to prepare for submission to the QS for cost estimation.
Before construction, the mechanical and electrical M&E engineer does the research on customer design proposal to evaluate the feasibility, cost and maintenance requirement of design or application. M&E engineers are responsible for engineering service including method of controlling the internal environment by means of ventilation, air conditioning, lighting installation and applied utilities such as electrical supply, water pumping and sanitary pumping. They must confer with architect and other consultants to implement operating resource system malfunction and provide technical information while making sure the system and process to meet requirement. The electrical engineer prepares technical drawings and specification of electrical system to ensure that installation and operation conform to standard and customer requirement with detailed calculation. The M&E engineer should estimate cost and submit bids for engineering, construction, and prepare contract documents. Besides that, M&E will take responsibility on the supervision of production workers and the design of evaluation program. They does engineering duties such as overseeing installation, operation and maintenance of utilities during construction. After that, the M&E needs to oversee the project production to assure that the project is complete satisfactory, on time and on budget while complying with operational and safety standards.
Before construction, the structural engineer takes the topographical survey from the land surveyor to check the earth's condition. If the soil is good and compact, they do not need pauses for the foundation and can build straight for pad footing. They have to make sure that the design of the structure does not affect the surrounding of piling jaya. When the contractor does piling, it loosens the surrounding soil. To prevent this, the engineer will use sheet pile to act as a wall, preventing the soil from collapsing. For the exterior of the house, the engineer has to design the foundation for the fencing and the gate. Before building the foundation for the semi-D, the engineer has to determine the specific use of the semi-D based on the Euro and British code and come up with the total dead and live load. Only then are they able to design the respective thickness and depth of the columns, beams and slab. They also have to verify whether the contractor is following the correct casting sequence. The civil engineer would propose a higher platform level in case of flooding. They have to calculate the discharge point for the rain, which would connect to the large sewer. After the land subdivision is approved, the civil engineer has to submit an engineering plan which consists of drainage and water reticulation, which is the water coming into the house from the bulk meter. Based on the architect's plan for scenario 1, the design has no columns as they are using shear walls for support. The structural engineer has to determine and advise the AR the thickness of the wall to cater to the building lot as well as the windwall on the structural walls. For the double volume living space, the engineer has to make sure that there are no columns in the way but ensure that the structure is still able to support itself. They also have to make sure that the roof structure is strong and able to withstand the wind load during windy days, and they also have to design the steel rafter to support the roof. Besides that, they have to design the RC gutter, which is reinforced concrete, so this RC also supports the roof. They have to counter-check the size of the downpipe the AR suggested to prevent flooding of the roof during rainy seasons. So the civil and structural engineer, also known as CNS, submits their own engineering plan and documents which consist of structural drawings and measurements to MBPJ. They also have to submit two forms, Form E and Form F. Form E is the Notice of Completion of Excavation for Foundations, so this form is to inform MBPJ that the foundation work is completed, and Form F is the application for the issue of occupation permit, which is after the completion of the building. So once this form are submitted, the local authority will come and check the semi-D.
The interior designer and landscape architect then starts working with the architect to design the interior of the semi-detached house and the exterior landscape so that the design is harmonious and seamless.
Interior designers, ID for short, have a few specializations such as commercial ID, residential ID, hospital ID, and many more. But for this scenario, a residential interior designer is involved as they are mainly skilled in designing the interiors of a home. The ID ensures that every space has been fully utilized, leaving no room for waste space, and every space must achieve a certain aesthetic level. Designing is not just based on the aesthetic value, but the ID need to consider the functionality and quality of the space. In the construction industry, the ID meets the client to get all the necessary requirements and needs for the interior design. Because it has been stated in the scenario that any design will do, a few conceptual sketches in compliance with the UBBL will be made and then shown to the client for approval. The ID and architect usually work together to make sure the interior designs and the building itself will come together harmoniously. The client and ID will then discuss more in depth on the designs and make amendments to the preliminary sketches. In order to give the client a clearer idea of the designs, the ID will prepare digital sketches using SketchUp. After the sketches have been approved and the ID have detailed knowledge on the client's wants and needs, a final drawing will be produced. While the building is being constructed, the ID will introduce various materials, finishes, and furniture to the client. After consulting the QS, the ID is responsible in advising the client on the choice of materials in order to prevent the cost from going over budget. The materials are not picked solely based on the design, but it is also influenced by other factors such as durability, thermal or heat loss, light control, operability, material quality, and so on. When the ID has a complete list of materials, both the list and the final drawings will be passed to the QS for tendering process. Before the ID proceeds to furnish the interior, the ID would visit the completed building to have a better look at the space and make a few amendments if necessary. The ID will conduct regular visits to the house during the furnishing process to ensure everything goes accordingly. When everything has been completed, the ID would take the client for a tour around the house to make sure the client feels satisfied with the interior design. Changes will be made where deemed necessary.
The landscape architect has a few roles to play during the construction process. One of the few roles that the landscape architect plays is to analyze environmental reports on the land condition, such as the energy usage and drainage. Besides that, the landscape architect is responsible for designing and drawing landscape designs for projects. The landscape architect is involved in the inspection of the site to prevent damages to the surroundings during construction to ensure the safety of the landscape during and after construction. During the construction process, the landscape architect comes in either in the middle or at the end of the construction process. As in the case of the scenario, The landscape architect comes in at the beginning of the construction and the senior does not state the specifications needed for the landscape, so the landscape architect must meet up with the client to understand his or her wants and needs. The landscape architect is also in charge of choosing softscape and hardscape that are environmentally safe while conferring with the advice of the green specialist. The landscape architect also chooses materials according to its quality. The design of the landscape must be done while conferring with the architect so that the design of the semi-detached house and its surroundings is seamless and natural. The landscape architect then produces the drawings on AutoCAD and SketchUp to be compiled into the tender by the quantity surveyor. Besides that, the landscape architect is to apply for the landscape approval, which must include landscape drawings and the different types of plants used. The architect must then prepare the project planning and the implementation schedule for the client's approval. The quantity surveyor will then produce the preliminary cost estimation for the building for the client's approval. After that, the AR applies for the rainwater harvesting (SPAH) to get approval. Finally, the AR prepares the working drawings and must submit the necessary documents including approval for rainwater harvesting (SPAH) for building plan approval by the MPPJ. Phase 3. Contract Documentation Phase. The architect starts by preparing the construction and detailed drawings while awaiting for the building plan approval by the MPPJ. The QS will then start to prepare the Bill of Quantities, also known as the BQ, which includes all the tender drawings of the consultants with the cost estimations. However, the M&E engineer, facade specialist and the CNS engineer will prepare their own BQs, as not all QS are knowledgeable about the M&E, facade and CNS structures. The QS then advises the contractor on procurement, tendering, contractual procedures and arrangement. The consultants then prepare all the necessary documents to be compiled into the Bill of Quantities, which will be called a tender document. The tender will then be sent to different contractors for cost estimation of materials. The client will then be engaged in meetings with contractors in which the architect will recommend the chosen contractor to the client. After the contractor is chosen, the client and the contractor are to sign a building contract. The winning tender by the contractor and detailed drawings by the architect are compiled together to form the BQ. The client needs to meet the team employed by the AR. The architect needs to make a contract between each consultant and sign it. The architect then administers the building contract. During this time, the contractor will visit the MPPJ to apply for earthwork plan approval, street lighting approval, road and drainage application, waste collection approval, and rural bin. Phase 4. Contract Implementation and Management. The architect is responsible to hold meetings with the consultants and give respective documents to the consultants. The architect must perform his duties under the terms and conditions that are set in the building contract. The AR then has to advise the client on the amount of workers needed as well as the amount of time needed to complete the project. The architect is also in charge of providing information and giving instructions to the contractor to follow by making sure the contractor follows the terms and conditions of the contract. The contractors must then prepare the Health and Safety Manual (DOSH). Besides that, the contractor is responsible to submit weekly reports of the construction process to the architect.
Before the demolition and building process, the quantity surveyor will send the tender to a few contractors to calculate the cost estimation for materials to build a semi-detached house. The best bidding for the product wins. The chosen contractor will hire employees to work at the construction site where an appointed subcontractor is hired to help solve problems together with contractor. First of all, the contractor has to communicate with the architect to get information and instructions, which is to build a semi-detached house on a subdivided piece of land. The contractor has the responsibility to plan, manage and monitor the construction process and follow the architect's given timeline. It is also the contractor's responsibility to submit weekly reports to the architects to keep them updated. In order to do so, the contractor has to coordinate well with the other consultants and workers. During the construction of the building, the contractor is in charge of taking care of the public and the workers' safety by preparing a Health and Safety Manual (DOSH). The contractor is required to comply with Malaysian Occupational Safety and Health Act 1994 and Environmental Quality Act 1974 and all regulations under the stipulated act at all times while working. While working to ensure safety of workers, all of the provided material and equipment such as engineering vehicles, tools and services that is necessary for the construction project are clean and well maintained. It is also the contractor's duty to dispose and recycle construction waste during and after the construction process. Lastly, the contractor is responsible to identify and rectify any defects for free that occurs in the building within 18 months after its construction. This is called the defects liability period. These defects include cracks, walls and piping issues. The architect will then issue a certification, which is the certification of making good defects after the defects are fixed. After 18 months have passed, any defects that appears are the responsibility of the owner.
And the QS are then responsible to assess the interim claims by the contractor by visiting the project site to monitor the progress as well. The facade specialist uses calibrated spray rack system to conduct water penetration testing on installed fenestration systems such as the curtain wall for quality control and quality assurance purposes. The system and many more were directly adopted from the American Society for Testing Materials ASTM E01105 as Malaysian standards. When the building is complete, the AI and the QS are to inspect the work and make sure the contractor is executing their building progress in accordance with the building contract and also to issue a certificate of practical completion. Any amendments made during the construction process would be compiled and be listed in a document called the variation order. Phase 5. Final completion. After the construction process, the MPPJ will conduct site visits to the site to ensure the constructed building follows the submitted plans. The AR will then issue a certificate of completion and compliance to the client after the building is deemed fit and safe to be used. Upon completion of the building, the GBI certifier will issue the assessment report to the GBIAP to register and award the GBI certification. The provisional GBI design assessment certification will then be issued with the accompanying GBI score sheet to show the scores achieved. The architect will certify all drawings and submit the entire maintenance manual, which contains all the warranties to the client. Then, a certificate of making good defects will be issued to the client once all defects have been rectified by the contractor. The client then pays the final progress installment, only then are the keys handed to the owner. The AR prepares the final accounts for the contract and issues the final certificate of payment to the contractor. After the construction process is completed, the house is ready for the two new owners to move in. Even after the house has been built, the house is under a defects liability period (DLP) which lasts 18 months. During this period of time, the contractor is responsible to repair any defect that occurs in the house free of charge, such as piping, leakage, and etc. After the 18 months is over, the contractor is not responsible to rectify any defects that occur. Instead, the client has to rectify these defects themselves using their own money. Conclusion. The construction process is a complicated order which requires professional bodies to execute it. The entire process contains 5 main stages in where each stage, different consultants play important roles to ensure the smooth completion of the building project. As a group, we have gathered that it is important for each consultant to be responsible in submitting their individual reports to the respective authorities to get approval for the construction to commence. We have learned that it is mandatory to get the various approvals during construction to ensure the safety of the public, workers, and the client itself during and after the construction process. For example, the contractor has to prepare the Health and Safety Manual in accordance to the Malaysian Occupational Safety and Health Act 1994 as well as the Environmental Quality Act 1974. This is to make sure that the workers and the public safety is kept in check at and around the construction site. Throughout this whole assignment, it has given us a clearer perspective on what we should expect from the construction industry. This assignment has also helped us to open our eyes to the multiple roles played by the consultants in depth, which has helped us to learn more about the jobs that we will be pursuing in the near future.